Okay, today we're going to talk about the founding principles of the Constitution. We're going to look at these principles from an English perspective and see them also under an international perspective, in an international context. First of all, what are the founding principles? So we've got the first 12 articles, we all know that. But what really are they? They're often called our value system. What we value. Many documents like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or like the Charter of the UN, or other constitutions, often there's a preamble. This is the preamble, and here we really find what we think is important. So this indicates the way we see the world as Italians. It builds our identity. Values are what we deem to be important, and our values, we all have values on a personal level. Maybe Berlusconi believes money and political power is very important. Maybe someone else thinks work is very important, or family, or sport, or intellectual prowess, or beauty, whatever it is. We value something on a very personal level. Normally our values come from our family. The most immediate source is from our families, and this builds our personal identity. But then we also have values which we share as Italians and build our Italian identity. And they're written here in the Constitution. We see here there's solidarity, rights, freedoms, a state which, is very active in helping the citizens and interfering to remove obstacles for the citizens. We're very international. We value religion and languages and culture, the development of culture, etc., etc. There's lots of values in these first 12 articles that really describe how an Italian sees the world and what is an Italian. So, and eventually, these distinguish us from other cultures. You've got Chinese values, which create the Chinese identity, or American values, which make the American identity, and they're all a little bit different, aren't they? The English, maybe they like to be independent, whereas the Italians, maybe they prefer solidarity. The Chinese are very interested that all rules are protected, and there are a lot of rules that control a lot of their behaviours. They want that. They feel more secure. For them, that's more important than human rights. There are human rights in China, but maybe it's interpreted in a bit of a different way, and in a bit of a more controlled way. So, we've got to see things from an international perspective. These are our values as Italians, but there are many other ways of doing things. But we are also in a competition for values in globalization. The Italian values are similar, very similar to European values. We can see it. England had a problem with European values, which one was solidarity, and we saw the emergence of Brexit because this solidarity for the English was too much. They wanted independence. The English value a lot of European values, which are, for example, free trade, free market, human rights, the freedoms we have to form of religion, of political belief, democracy. These type of things are the same for the English, but this one thing they do value more: independence and individualism, shall we say. And whereas the European and the Italians value a lot more the solidarity. Yes, there is a competition because globalization is the world coming together in one system. We're becoming more interdependent and interconnected and acting in one system. We've got economic globalization, but also political globalization. A lot of bodies, organs in the world that are, international, like the International Court, the International UN, the WTO, all these institutions. And we always want our values to prevail. We saw that in the Cold War. There was a battle of values between capitalism and socialism. We saw that capitalism did prevail in the end over the Soviet model, and now the world has got this prevailing value of the free market, much more than a planned economy. So there's always been this competition of values, and now we see the values that are competing are globalization versus nationalism. That's emerged. What should we value more, our independence or globalization in the future, in the world that we're constructing together? Just to look a little bit at the UK constitution and compare this with the Italian constitution, one big difference is the UK constitution is unwritten. Okay, so we do have documents, see one here, Magna Carta, which are constitutional documents and record constitutional principles like habeas corpus, etc. And certain freedoms. But most of the UK constitution is just emerged through convention, and it's unwritten. It's just assumed that prevails. Whereas the Italian constitution is very clear in a written document, very detailed. And the English constitution evolved over a long period of time. We didn't have a moment like the Italians did after the war, where every political philosophy, every faction sat down and decided what do they believe in, what should Italy be, create a social pact that the whole of Italy can support. We didn't have that moment. It just evolved, and for that reason it wasn't given a popular consent. There was no moment where we voted on a constitution. We the people believe this is our constitution, our base of all our system, the rules of the game, if you like. it's flexible. Any ordinary law can change the constitution. So it is an ordinary law. Parliament can change the constitution. There's no hierarchy there. Parliamentary law is the highest law in the land. So it's very flexible, whereas we know the constitutional law in Italy is difficult to change. It needs 2/3 majority in both houses after a period, voting twice, or a referendum, etc. It's difficult, there's obstacles, it's an aggravated process. And we see also the English constitution is very minimal, it's very free, it leaves a lot for us to invent. Whereas the Italian constitution is detailed and controlling, and in there we see what the parents must do for their children. They must educate and instruct them, and the syndicati, what they do, and how to build a political party, and everything, even the responsibilities of officials and things like that. The public officials, they're responsible for everything's in there. Very long and very detailed. So there's some differences. Can we change these founding principles? I've heard lots about the fact that we can't change them ever, which for an English person rings a bit untrue. I mean, if everyone in Italy 100% agreed to change Article 3 or something, you just could. I think England likes change, and we change very easily. Italy is a bit resistant to change, so I think you could, but it would be a revolution. These are considered supreme principles, they call them supreme principles, and people believe very deeply in them. If for example, you said, no longer have we got human rights or democracy, or this would create a revolution. People feel very deeply, and it would cause a lot of resistance and probably a violent revolution. It would be a revolution anyway, because if you change your identity so fundamentally as changing all these deeply held values, Italy is not Italy anymore. So in that sense you can't. But also it would be resisted very strongly and maybe violently too, because people would defend forcibly these principles they deem to be Italy, they see as being Italian. In England, we could say the same thing. There are parts that we couldn't change without really changing what England or UK is. Part of our constitution is that there's a unity between Scotland and England, and we may change this. We may have a referendum, and Scotland may vote for independence, but UK would no longer be the UK. So we could say definitely that by doing this, it would be a revolution, and there could be a lot of deep tensions involved in this. How much would Scotland pay for the public debt? What about the Shetland Islands, which always vote to be part of England and where there's lots of oil? Scotland would always say they're Scottish. England would always say they're not, because they voted to stay, etc., etc. So it would cause a lot of tension. There are other things that we see as supreme principles, I think. Not that it's explicitly said, but you've got the rule of law, parliamentary sovereignty, representative democracy. It would be easier to change these in England because there are no constitutional checks. The Parliament can do what it likes. There's much more feeling that Parliament is sovereign and can do whatever it takes. So it would be easier to change these things, probably, than to have a revolution in England. Okay.